Hello everyone, this is Tim, and I'm going to do this one in black and white just because I think it's kind of fun. I'm going to review the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Player's Handbook. I've played a few one-shots of this, and I'm currently playing in a short-lived campaign online via Skype that I've been talking about. And I was just going to go through the book and just kind of give you some opinions I have of it, what stuck out, and what kind of melted into the background. I like that it has a 3-column format. This reminded me of the rules cyclopedia for classic Dungeons and Dragons. It seems like there's some big changes in the character classes, combat, and the experience chapters. There's a few quotes here. One of the truly marvelous things about a role-playing game is that even though the concept is difficult to explain, it is simple to demonstrate. And I just thought that kind of jumped out at me. That made, kind of like when I read the first edition Dungeons and Dragons AD&D books, there was just a few quotes that just kind of jumped out and really kind of rang true for me, and that one did as well. The beginning has an introduction and an example of play. There's a glossary of terms, and this is helpful for someone who's more of a modern gamer that's getting back into it. Things like FACO and other definitions are there, which is nice. One of the big differences between AD&D 2nd Edition and like 3rd Edition, for instance, is that a lot of actions are covered by rolling under your stat on a d20. So you roll your 6 stats, strength, con, dex, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, with 3d6. Or whatever other method you want to roll. There's multiple methods. And to perform like a strength check or something, you roll a d20 under that. A lot of complaints with the older games are that sometimes you roll under, sometimes you have to roll over, but it really is kind of a simple thing to just kind of get used to. Saving throws you roll over, attacks you roll over, and checks you roll under, thief skills you roll under on a d100. It's a little quirky, but it's modular. So if you want to house roll something, if you affect one area of the game, you're not going to affect every other area of the game. So I really like that about the older systems. There's 9 alignments, kind of like first edition. AC is -10, 210, lower being better. Humans are the only ones that can dual class. You basically take one class and then you can take another class, basically leaving the old class behind. And there are multi-class, but only demi-humans are allowed to do this. Like you can be, and there's certain restrictions. Basically, they're trying to keep to that kind of Tolkien-esque fantasy race kind of traditional RPG kind of flavor to them. So, however well that seems to be put into play, put into the rules, is up to you. 3rd edition was nice because you could play any race and any class, but this kind of has a different flavor to it. Balance is, this game doesn't really bow to the altar of balance as much, but it has, I think it has nice flavor. I don't always agree with the humanocentric themes in the game, but again, that is something that could easily be house rolled by a GM that wanted to get rid of some of those restrictions. But that is a rant that I've done in the past, so I won't do that again. You can have henchmen, hirelings, examples like that for money that you can basically hire on for. Charisma is important for these hirelings, so charisma isn't a dump stat, especially if you have different methods of rolling dice. Usually if you arrange your dice, you'll get a dump stat. If you roll straight down, for instance, you get what you get. There's pros and cons for that. We talked about that as well for other games. Movement rate in the game is units of feet indoors, and it's yards outdoors. And sometimes that can confuse people. The same number just has a different unit. Feet inside, yards outside. With the multi-class rules, you actually put your experience in both classes. So, for instance, I'm playing a elf fighter thief in the AD&D 2nd Edition game on Skype, and as I get experience, I'm dividing it in half and putting half towards the fighter, half towards the thief. So it's going to take me a lot longer to level up in both of them than if I was a single class. But I get the benefits of both. So I kind of like the feeling of that. I like the flavor. It seemed to make more sense to me than D&D 3rd edition, where you went, okay, I'm going to take a fighter this level, and then I'm going to take a thief next level, and then a fighter, and then a thief. You do both at the same time, and it really just comes down to the different experience totals to figure out when you actually level up in each one. So I kind of like that, actually. Open Doors is a d20 roll, and you check out against the table. There's weapon and non-weapon proficiencies, but these are optional rules. And you get initial weapon proficiencies and non-weapon proficiencies. It's hard to say. At character creation, and then you can get more at later levels. But remember, that's optional. I didn't know that was optional, so that was kind of interesting for me. I thought that was just part of the system. And depending on what your culture of play is in your area, how the people in your area run a certain game, maybe they run it not according to the rules, but that's just what you assumed was in the rules. So sometimes it can be interesting to look at the rules themselves and go, oh, well, that's not actually in here, but I kind of like the way we play it, so we're going to keep playing it that way. I love when people take rules and do whatever they want with it. That's kind of fun. There's rate of fire for missile attacks. There's different attacks per round. One clarification, sometimes it'll say you have 3 attacks per 2 rounds, and I think it comes down to the player or the GM. You can have 1 attack in the first round and 2 attacks in the second round, and then you kind of go back, and so it's 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's a little funky, but it has a nice little progression to it. Let's see what else we got here. There's regeneration. You can heal faster. Resurrection percentage. There's some things added into some of the different stats. They have the 9 schools of magic that I was familiar with. Specialists can focus on 1 school. What else we got here? Some characters are actually immune to certain spells, which I thought was interesting. I didn't remember that for having high intelligence. There's different spheres of influence and 16 categories of cleric spells, kind of like the D&D domains in 3rd edition. There's a surprise roll on a 1d10, and a 1, 2, or 3, you're basically surprised, and that basically cancels your first initiative for that turn. There's a system shock percentage and percent chance to survive major magical effects. And THAC0 is the big interesting thing that I think pretty much came into effect with 2nd edition. Before they just had the 2-hit matrix, but that's basically to hit armor class 0, and 0 is a pretty good armor class. Like I said, AC goes from -10 to 10, so it's kind of like the mid level. But 0 is very good. If you have 0, you should be very happy. A turn equals 10 minutes. 1 turn equals 10 rounds, and 1 round equals a minute. Now, I know what you're saying. How can a round be a minute? Well, it's interesting that the book goes in to say that every attack you make isn't necessarily just 1 swing of the sword. It's multiple swings of the sword. It's parrying. It's moving around a little bit. But that's all pretty much encapsulated in that 1 roll. So when you're fighting, I got a marker here, and you make an attack roll, you're doing this, you're swinging around, you're blocking with your shield, you're doing this. So I think that can add to the flavor of the game, is that you can do a lot more in a minute. And they give some examples for what you can do, what you can't do. Next page. There's weapon speeds, which are, I believe, optional, and they modify initiative. Now, initiative is pretty much roll 1d10, and you can add your weapon speed to it, and that affects your initiative. And it's optional for spell casting times as well. And spell casting times will tell you what turn of initiative your spell actually goes off in, which is nice because, let's say you cast it on initiative 4 and it takes 4 rounds of initiative to cast it. So if you get attacked between that time, your spell gets interrupted. I like spells getting interrupted. I think that adds a nice flavor to the game. There's all kinds of different ways of generating stats. Really won't go into them. There's actually 6 optional ways. Okay, I'm going to break down the statistics, the stats a little bit. Strength, if you ever roll an 18, you have a possibility of exceptional strength, and you basically just roll a d100 and see how powerful that 18 is. It's interesting. But you have open doors, damage adjustment, bend bars, lift gates, that sort of thing. Dexterity is a reaction adjustment to your surprise rolls, missile attacks, defense adjustment, saving throws for things that can be dodged, and armor class. It lowers your armor class. Constitution is it's actually the initial score is the number of times you can be resurrected. I'm not a real big fan of resurrection in games. Reincarnation is a lot of fun, but it's there and it's just part of the game. Each raise lowers your con score by 1, which I thought that was interesting. Because you can start looking pretty bad by the time you get raised several times. And of course it has hit point adjustment, and only warriors get a +3 or +4 for a high constitution. Everybody else is maxed out at +2. So that just shows you the warriors are better at those sorts of things. The con bonus to hit points pretty much ends at 10th level, and then you basically just get a few after that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a bonus to saves versus poison, and dwarves and halflings don't use those. They basically have special resistances. Yeah, I don't know. And there's a chance for regeneration of certain body parts or something that's missing, or healing at basically high con scores. Intelligence is additional languages, but only speaking. They give extra proficiency slots if you're using that system. The highest level spell that can be cast by a wizard, but a lot of other characters will of course ignore that. There's a chance to learn a spell. Basically, if you find a new spell, you roll a percentage and see if you can learn it or not. If you don't learn it, you can wait to the next level, try again. There's an optional roll for the maximum number of spells per level, and spell immunity to certain illusions, which I thought was interesting. Wisdom, it gives a bonus to magical defense adjustment for spells that attack the mind. You got some common sense. You can see through those things. Bonus spells, but that's only for priests, clerics. Chance of spell failure, and it seems to be only that. I don't know, I'm not really sure. I wasn't really sure about this. I'm not sure if only the priest spells can fail. I'm not really clear about that. Charisma is the maximum number of henchmen. The loyalty base of those henchmen for morale checks, and a reaction adjustment that basically gives you a bonus or a negative to certain social rules you want to try to do. I want to emphasize that the older games generally talk about basically role-playing things out instead of leaving it down to the dice roll, which I really come around to. At first, it's like, well, if you're going to make a social character, you should probably make one so that it has some mechanical benefit. But I've always been one that talks and tries to explain why the guard let me past him, or I was able to get more for our equipment that we were trying to sell. So I think I like that now better than I used to. Again, that's, I guess, the old school convert in me. There's a section on interpreting stats, and it talks a little bit about character skill versus player skill, and how it is still a game, so you don't have to play as dumb as your stats are if you don't want to. Alright, I think I'm going to stop there, and I'll go to the next video. Thanks.